Today we have a guest here who is very interesting because he is a neurodivergent veteran, but also he has a spiritual knowledge. So today I welcome Mike Nasche. Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Really glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have you back. So let's dive deep into the spiritual side. As you are both a military veteran and also someone who is into spirituality, how do you reconcile the identity of a warrior with the belief that we are eternal consciousness?
What a great question. I don't know that there's any reason for them to need to be mutually exclusive. I think the idea of reconciling them uh, is probably unnecessary, but it makes sense that people would think that it does need to be, because that's why it's a great question. I mean, the idea of the warrior in the garden. I don't know if you're familiar with that analogy. It's um, Jordan Peterson said something in a little clip that I saw him talking about that. Um, we need to have the capability for violence or strength, but also the restraint and the wisdom to keep it in check and to use it for good. I mean, I'm totally changing that around, but yeah, I believed as a young man that you couldn't be both, that it was mutually exclusive, and now just I don't see it that way anymore. I love the idea of more people, not just men, becoming more enlightened while also being capable to be fierce, but for good, for protection of the weak,
Yes, I
things like that.
perfectly
Yeah.
understand, especially I think because us neurodivergents, we have such a hard time to set boundaries because oftentimes we grow up to be a little bit of a people pleaser because we get so much criticism, especially when we're young. And then I think we need to find our inner warrior just to set boundaries and to say, hey, that is not okay. I don't want to be touched or whatever. So I think you're right. Um, Now that you have talked about this one thing that you said when you were younger, you believed that they were mutually exclusive and then you let go of that belief. Is there any other spiritual belief where you say you had that in the past and now it's no longer that way? Like, for example, that you say, I didn't believe in God in the past, but now I do. Or any other spiritual belief where you say that has changed radically for your life? And why? What do you pinpoint as the key change moment where you say that's where this belief has been altered?
Mm. I don't think it started with a change in spirituality, but I do. While you're asking the question, two things came to mind. When I was in high school, or probably even middle school, I had this strange belief that you couldn't be both smart and cool. It was like those were the nerds. I don't want to be associated with the kids who get straight A's or that work hard. That was part of the environment that I was in, where um, you had to choose. That was mutually exclusive. And then as I grew up got a little older in high school, I realized that some of the best athletes on my football and basketball and wrestling teams were also honor students. And I realized that there were these scholar athletes that were getting scholarships to Ivy League schools, to play sports because they were also, straight A, plus students. And that was my first hint that you could be both, and that it was not just cool to be both, but it was so challenging and difficult. And it was like they were very elite. And then I saw it again in the military, where some of those folks that I just described go to the academies like West Point and the Naval Academy, and they are brilliant human beings who are incredibly physically capable and also willing to serve others. And because I was a terrible student growing up, I never had the opportunity or wasn't even aware of those things. And then to see those type of people, that I'm like, wow, this is really uh, fascinating. And I realized that I would tie that to probably better answer your question, that um, very few things are mutually exclusive. There are definitely some things that are absolute trade-offs, and you really have to choose one or the other, but things like that are not it. So
Yeah.
yes, you can be a warrior and very spiritual. You can be, strong and capable and also very loving and compassionate. Um, that is something that's happened to me later in life.
Yes, and I think humanity does not only have this problem of black and white thinking, but also the other way around. Like, for example, just because you are Muslim, you don't have to necessarily be an Islamist. And just because you are Jewish, you don't have to necessarily be a Zionist. So, all of these things, humans are often thinking way too much in black and white just to get a little box and to put the person in front of them into a little box. But I think we have to think much broader, as you said. So if
I
there
agree.
was,
Yeah.
do you want to say something?
Yeah, no. There's I think it makes, I don't want to like call people small-minded or say that, if they think that way that they're less than, but I feel like there is a desire for us as humans to categorize and to put people and ideas and thoughts in boxes. And that is conditioning. That's our environment. That's training. That is the matrix, if you will. And no, now there are some things where there is two sides to the thing. I can't imagine a scenario yet where a car can have both incredible horsepower and torque and also fuel efficiency. Those are usually trade-offs that, do you want this or do you want that? There, you see that all over. It's the dark and the light, but not with these other things. A lot of this is just constructed in our own environment, in our culture, and the things that have been put on us that do not have to exist the way that we might believe that they are.
So, if there was one key experience in your life where you say, okay, that changed it all for me, for most people, it was an ego death where they lost something important, like somebody died who they loved, or they lost their job, their house, their home, their car, or for other people, it's a near-death experience. So, there are tons of different experiences that you can have in order to have an awakening experience after. But if there was a key moment to you where you say, okay, that was crucial for my awakening, could you tell us more about that moment and why you think it was crucial? And please also tell us, how did your wife actually react to that new you that emerged, that totally different person?
It's funny how you ended that with how did my wife respond, because the thing that changed me was my divorce from my
Ah.
wife. um, I latched on to religion in middle school, like sixth, seventh grade. I'd gone to like a vacation Bible school where, heard the gospel, and I had a couple of strong influential women, my grandmother and my aunt, that were um, very strong believers that did that. But for my own journey, it was middle school through high school where I got very involved in my youth group and was, studying scripture, going to church religiously. And I carried that through. I got married very young, and it was, I don't know, probably about 12, 13 years ago, something like that, that I went through my divorce, and it shook my view of religion, or at least of Christianity. And it made me start questioning all the things that I had been taught about that. And so there was a really powerful book that I read by Vishen Lakhiani called Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And in that book, he talks about questioning what you believe and all the things that you've been taught and putting it through your own checks and balances, studying and saying, does this serve you? Does it make you feel guilty or feel shameful or whatever? And it's like, so going through my divorce made me question all the things that I believed about marriage and about religion and about faith. And that book was kind of a guide to how to test your beliefs, and do they serve you, and do you truly believe them? And some of them I definitely kept, and some of them I became very open-minded to. And the things that I became very open-minded to were the idea of spirituality separate from religion. I grew up in a place where it was a Southern Baptist church, and it was very, if it's not Jesus, it's the devil. So things like yoga and meditation, mindfulness, all of that stuff, that's the devil, is what the old blue-haired ladies, treat like you can't do that. Um, and then I met other people who were both believed in Christianity, believed in Jesus, but also believed in astrology or the power of Mother Earth, or that there are things that we don't understand, and that's okay. And all of that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole of questioning all these things and that I had believed, and leaning into this stuff. I remember going to a yoga class for the first time. I was dating a woman who was into that, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. Sounds like a great workout, hot yoga. And I remember doing it, but at the end, they were doing, I think it was either ohms or alms, and I was like, I thought I was going to go to hell. I thought Jesus was going to strike me down, sitting in this room full of people, doing ohms and alms. And now I listen to amazing teachers like Dr. Wayne Dyer, who explains that when he talks about the ohms and the alms, how they're just like, it's a word for God. Like all the words that we use in language that talk about God or the creator or the universe have that sound in it. And I'm like, so yes, that was a very long way for me to answer the journey. But yes, I used to think things like I couldn't do yoga or any of those type things without sinning against God. And I'm like, maybe it's the same stuff, just with different names. Maybe it's not, but
Yes.
maybe it is.
I also have this feeling about everybody has to know for themselves where you draw the line. So some people say yoga is the devil. And for me, my personal line where I draw the line, where I say, okay, I would never touch that, that's a Ouija board. I would never touch a Ouija board. But I did do.
I feel the same. Yeah, I think that's probably a line I would draw. That seems a little wild to me.
But I did do tarot cards, and tarot cards for me just work over a very ancient symbolism. The pictures on the cards are telling something to the subconscious mind, and all of the pictures on the major arcana cards are basically just the hero's journey, the simple hero's journey that we see in every Hollywood movie, like the Fool is the very first card where he doesn't know who he is and what his job on earth is and stuff like that. So I could see it has a relation to my everyday life. So I thought that can be dangerous if it has a relation to my everyday life. And besides, I think that people mix a lot two things that are not together. For example, some people think that with tarot cards, you talk to the dead. To me, honestly, I see a big difference there. So taking the tarot cards and looking into the collective consciousness or the morphogenetic field of Earth right now is not talking to the dead. For me, that's the difference. But I think people have their own mind and their own view depending on what stage of their spiritual journey they're on. And you can only meet them at the place where they're at. If you come up with stuff that is too much for their mind to take at this moment, then you easily realize, okay, that goes too far for them. Yeah. So what I wanted to ask you is, where is your stance on this planet? So we see that there is a matrix on this planet, and we have this feeling inside it is artificially put on top of what the natural order is. Like for me, it's God planned this as a Garden Eden, and then somebody else came in and said, oh, I'm going to turn this Garden Eden into something very ugly. Yeah. And then boop, the matrix was put on top like a hat, like a dome, whatever. Yeah. And then it started to deteriorate and become really ugly over time. So what is your stance? Are we here, like voluntarily saying, okay, I want to incarnate here because I want to help earthlings, I want to help the people on earth to ascend? Or are we here involuntarily, that somebody sends us through a reincarnation grid and just basically recycles our soul against our will and just puts us back here like cattle that is being held for the collection of louche or whatever? Yeah. Do you think we're here voluntarily or not?
That's a fun question. I've enjoyed watching a lot of the movies that have fun ideas on these type of things. I find them fascinating. I haven't found any that I'm like, wow, that totally makes sense. But some maybe more than others. When it comes to why we're here, I feel like the things that I am pretty confident of is that we are spirit having a human body experience, and that we exist outside of this realm of being on this planet, that our experience does not end with death. I don't think it began with birth. So that I feel pretty confident of. Where, why, how, who, I don't know. I think it's fun to see other people's ideas about that through fun movies and sci-fi. But I don't have a I don't I don't think anybody has come up with an idea or shown something that is probably more than like a tiny fraction of what the truth actually is. Whenever I see things like the Egyptian pyramids and everybody's, different perspective, I'm like, maybe there's a little hint of truth from a lot of different ideas. I don't think anybody's even come close to be like, here's the answer. Here's what it is. I bet it is so far beyond not just the Egyptian pyramids, but I bet how it all happened is so far beyond what our primitive, minds could comprehend. Is nuts. I don't know if you've watched Project Hail Mary, but I just watched it 2 nights ago. Um, Phenomenal. And it had a couple of elements of that of, okay, here's something that's going on that would help explain it. So I love all those different ideas, whether we're talking about, you know, uh, like Prometheus, like the Alien movie, or whether we're talking about X-Men, where which the one where the villain was ancient Egyptian, god. Like there's so many fun things that I'm like, oh, it's kind of neat. So yeah.
So the answer is you haven't really decided yet if you're here voluntarily or not.
Um, I listened to Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of his programs on Audible recently, and he brought up the fact that he believes that I don't know if he believes, but he was saying that we choose to be here and we're choosing the journey that we're on, and that all the challenges that we have are helping to enlighten us. And I think that is probably the closest to what I would believe if I were to dig. But I would never try to convince someone else that I'm right, because I don't know. But I liked what he was delivering, and so I think there's probably something to that. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I'm just asking because some people go with one theory, others with the other. Some people say The Matrix with Keanu Reeves was a documentary, and we're basically just being recycled here. And other people say, yeah, but right now this recycling grid has already been removed because the good guys came in, all of these positive aliens, and they removed all of this. So we cannot reincarnate here against our will. It's impossible. So that there are so many theories about it. So I just wanted to know. Have you seen the movie Disclosure Day?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I would add it to the list. It looked like something I would be very interested in enjoying.
Otherwise, I would have asked you on your take on aliens. It's like, do you think basically that the aliens have long been here and that they look like us, that they are living among us all the time since years and years? Do you maybe think that they have been here even before us? Because some people say the aliens have actually been here first and then came the human race. Or do you
Yeah.
think humanity didn't have any contact yet at all?
Um, I don't know. I think what I like about that in those movies is it expands the mind and makes us question what we believe. I think that's the healthiest part. Is I don't know that any of us will ever figure it out. And some of it is here for entertainment, but I bet there's little elements of truth in some of these things. I remember growing up Christian and a science teacher talking about the probability, like it would be more unlikely for us to be the only life in the universe. And I was like, yeah, but no, that my Sunday school teacher, said that. But I could also imagine that, maybe we have a God that created something so big that we couldn't get to the end. Um, but also I like that makes us sound way too special for how incredible the universe is, for us to believe that we're the only ones here. So yes, that is something that has changed from my youth to today, is believing that, yeah, that it feels very silly to try to think that we are the only life in the universe, whether there are other things among us. I think science alone has proven that there have been more species that have become extinct than are currently on the planet now. Like that's wild.
Mm.
And there's more that has already, disappeared than that there are currently here today. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I believe on it, but nothing. I don't know. I would say nothing would surprise me, but yeah, I'm open to hearing other people's ideas and enjoying it. Not trying to convince somebody else that my beliefs are right.
Well, I always say, as long as the aliens do not knock on my door and hand me 5 million euros, then I do not care if they are here or not, honestly. Because if my neighbors are from Syria or from Albania or from Mars, I really do not care. As long as
Yeah,
everybody's nice to me, I'm perfectly fine
yeah.
with any aliens being here. So, as you mentioned God, and you said the universe that God created is so beautiful and so vast, it would be really a waste of space to not share it with other beings, only with humans. Who or what is God to you? I mean, how did you define it for yourself? Did you only define it through like what you got as a kid, the Christian spiritual teachings, or did you also maybe read into other books? Did you maybe read the Bhagavad Gita or the Quran? Did you collect certain information? And how did you mold all of that information into your personal picture of who or what God is?
Oof, this is a good one. Okay, so growing up, it was, if it's not in the Bible, it's not there. There was this amazing pastor, or is an amazing pastor, that he was a guest preacher at the church that I went to when I was newly married. Vodi Bakum, Vodie, Vodi Bakum, might be two D's. And he did his postdoctoral research at Oxford on why the Bible is true. And his explanation blew my mind. It was fascinating. But also, what's there is he's not saying that there's not stuff that's not in there, but he describes why the Gospels that describe the life of Jesus and then some of the things that happen in the Old Testament, why he believes them to be very accurate. And that gave me a ton of confidence in believing that this is not just made up stuff. Do we fully understand it? Probably not, but that I found very fascinating, and his research definitely convinced me that there's way more truth in that than mystery. What I've taken with that is to say that there's so much unexplained that I believe is also, it's more of a and not a but type thing with what is found in the Bible. It's the idea of all of this other stuff. So I was kind of losing track there. You were asking me how that has changed,
What the
and
different
what I believe now.
influences were that made your
Okay,
picture of God?
yeah. So I didn't lose any of the core elements of Christianity. I believe that God is a creator and has created this that we are experiencing. Whether God created like the whichever theory of like mature Earth, of why the dinosaurs, or were there dragons or all this other stuff, or I don't know, but that helped me kind of confirm a handful of things about my faith, hearing someone else's Oxford postdoctoral research about why these certain things are to be true. But the other stuff that's added to it is there are like 30 something different what are they called, denominations of Baptist, just of Baptists. And the reason why is because of little differences on, they believe, oh, I believe it's a sin to dance. Oh, I think it's okay to dance, but only at a wedding. Little things like that. And I'm like, that is what I think has made religion what it is, in a way that I'm like, nah, man, that's not cool. So that has been me just being more open-minded to hearing other people's ideas. When it comes to other things that I've read and dug into, I've actually probably learned more from teachers on social media that are sharing ideas than I have of like reading old texts. I'm like, okay, this guy might be onto something. I wouldn't go as far to like flat earthers or whatever, but I'll dig down some rabbit holes and other people who have done other research and found things. And I'm like, hmm, that's clever. Where in the past, I was like, nope, that doesn't match my current belief of, what my Sunday school teacher told me. So no, now I'm very open-minded to things. So
That brings me to something, because I also have that. I go through social media and then I see somebody who has a very interesting, smart concept, and I go like, ooh, that's something I have to ponder. And there was recently a woman, and she said, the problem about being a targeted individual is you're constantly being watched because they want to profile you over years and years and years and years. And she says, we know.
okay,
She's now watch. She says, we know from quantum physics that if an atom is observed, it behaves differently than if it would
the
not
observer
be
effect.
observed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she says that's exactly the problem of a target individual, she claims, because being under the constant watchful eye makes your personality different. It makes you behave
Yes.
differently. And wait,
Mm-hmm.
I personally oppose that. I oppose that because I can voluntarily, from myself, I can say, I do not care that I'm being watched. I will stay in my authentic truth no matter who is watching. Okay, I do not care if it's the Catholic Church watching me, or if it's the police, or if it's the firefighters, or if it's other women who judge me. I do not care. I will stay myself. I will live my own truth. I will be authentic, and I will speak from my heart, and I will say what's in my mind. And I personally say, if I do all that, if I'm actually authentic, and if I have that highest, they say authenticity is the highest state of the Hawkins scale, then I personally believe that their narrative that they are trying to build with this observation and with this profiling has to naturally fall apart because I said so. What's your take on that?
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but it sounds like you think you exist outside the laws of physics. No, it is a law of physics, the observer effect. You can't avoid it. And I also agree with you that we have a lot of power to choose how we behave. But there are also things that our the way that we observe other people's observations does change us. Like even like from Freud came up with the idea of the therapy couch where you lay down. Do you know why? Do you know why the idea of laying down on the couch?
I would have my theories on that, but they are not very flattering for Freud, so I better let you say that.
Okay. It's because if I'm talking to my therapist and I say something and you have a micro expression
Hmm.
of disgust, of shame,
I get it.
of anything else, I see it and I feel it, and it changes what I'm willing to share with you. So the idea of me not seeing your face and your body language, because you don't have as much control as you think you do. There's a ton of science on like the micro expressions that happen. So
In-
the fact that that influences, because I've had that experience. I've talked to therapists where I could tell I shared something and they disapproved and I felt judged by them. And now my internal desire, as much as I want to not care what other people think about me, I noticed that it changed what I was willing to share or how I would share. We also do it like we grew up as children. That is how our behavior, how our personality is crafted on what is acceptable and what is not. You make a joke that's a little off color and people don't like it, you don't do that again.
but that's
Kids hear
exactly,
somebody say something funny and they try to repeat the funny thing because they want the response. So it's built in us.
but
We can
that's
become more
exactly
elevated.
That's exactly what you just said with Freud and the couch. That's exactly the argument that actually makes me right. I mean, there is no right and wrong. Yeah, this is a discussion. But that is actually point for me because as a targeted individual, most of the time you do not see the observer. You just know, okay, I have an iPhone in my room, and I know that any kind of being of these people, let's say it's the cops or whoever, or the CIA, I don't care, anyone can just hack into my phone and just listen in to what I say, or just film me how I'm
Yeah.
sleeping or whatever.
So the
So,
science is different. I agree with you. Knowing you're being watched versus not knowing and just being watched, it feels like it doesn't change. on the most micro level of science, that's where it does. So when it comes to, are you going to, eat a healthier salad as opposed to the cheeseburger because you're being watched? Yeah, that stuff does happen to us, and we can try to be so elevated that we don't care, or if we don't know, yeah, it definitely changes. But no. In the laws of physics, it happens at the most minute level, and that's where they're saying, um, even beyond our comprehension, things do change. It might not actually change your choices, but things are changed.
Yeah, that's also a question of where you draw the line. Because, for example, if everybody in the restaurant eats a salad, then maybe I don't take the salad because I think I have to adapt to everyone. Because maybe I think, oh my God, they must have salmonella or any kind of bacteria in their meat because nobody's taking it. It must be somehow dangerous, So I'm actually taking the salad not because I want to adapt to the others, but because I fear that something's wrong with the meat, That would be my first impression of that. But okay, I mean, we have 5 minutes left. So if anyone watching this interview only remembers one sentence about who they truly are, what would you want this sentence to be? What should people remember?
About who they truly are. You get to be whoever you want. You have the ability to reinvent yourself. If there's something you don't like about yourself, now there's some things we can't change, but most of it we can. Yeah. I think last time you asked me a question and the answer was more along the lines of, we only get one life, make the most of it, type of vibe, or at least that's I think what I remember. But right now I'm like, if there's something you don't like about you or your circumstance, you have so much more control than you probably believe. And I think most of us, probably, if somebody hears that and they want to disagree with me, then that means they're hanging on to the identity that they have, that because it serves them in a way that is probably beyond what they think that they want. It's like, being a victim. It feeds them in some way or whatever. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to live this life. I had a great lesson one time about the like, what is truth. It might have actually been in that book I mentioned, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and it's like that idea of what is truth. And if it's not true for all people in all places at all times, it's not truth. And this idea that you believe something to be true, but if you were born 50 years earlier or in another country, it's not true. So then it's not truth. And so I'm like, if it's outside of those realms, like, man, you can do what you want. You can become who you want to be. You have so much more power. And if you're resistant to that idea, it's because whoever you are now serves you more in some way. And maybe you should explore that. Figure it out.
Thank you so much for this interview. It was great, and I really hope that one day we can maybe make a third one. Thank you so much for being here.
Fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.